What's up, Hokie Nation? And welcome into episode 29 of Talking with Teel, presented by State Farm. April is here. Spring ball continues here in Blacksburg. Portal season is unfortunately here for David Cunningham and Virginia Tech men's basketball, and the Final Four awaits this weekend in Indy. All that and much more coming up on episode 29 of Talking with Teel, which starts right now. And we record on Wednesday, April 1st. Happy April Fool's Day 2026 from the Tech Solutions Studio and the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. Remember to like, subscribe, and refer the show to a friend. I'm your host, Carter Hill. To my left is our senior staff writer, Andy Bitter. Across the way is our managing editor, Mr. David Cunningham. Nick Brown, our director of media, is producing behind the scenes. And as always, we are joined by the Virginia Sports Hall of Famer, David Teel. Teel, how are you? Good to see you.
Doing great, guys. Happy April. Fabulous time of year. Final Four, Masters, baseball opening days. It's pretty darn good.
Straight back from Charleston, South Carolina, too, by the way. Got to see the Charleston Open this past weekend, rocking the sweatshirt right now. We are all set and ready to roll. You know, I thought about it today, just a quick side note, and you guys can talk about it however you want to. I saw on Twitter when I got up this morning, it's the 5-year anniversary of Roy Williams announcing his retirement. And I remember when that tweet first went out there from Carolina basketball, everybody was like, oh my gosh, April Fool's Day got us. Nope. Hubert Davis was the next head coach about, 2-3 days later. That's my first memory of April Fool's Day, by the way.
This is always the worst day to be on Twitter. Because people always do stuff, and I always tell young journalists, just don't. If you have an inkling this will be really funny, just don't do it. It's not going to work out well. Somebody will take it seriously, or you'll tweet something that is stupid. So, of the many pitfalls to have on social media, this is the one day. Keep your head on a swivel here and don't fall for stuff.
5 years ago, on April 1st, we were on the Virginia Tech campus for some kind of football interviews. And I was leaving town, had yet to get off campus, and my phone started buzzing, and I nearly drove off the road because it was the Roy Williams news.
The other interesting thing about today is that there's a rocket going up, and that's real, the Artemis. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't.
You have no
idea, right?
I'm just uncultured.
You have no idea. Going around the moon.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
It's been a minute since I've gone around the moon.
Yeah, I think this is the farthest astronauts will travel since 1972. I think I read that.
Seems like there should be more attention paid to that. That's kind of a cool thing.
It is really cool. I'm excited. It's happening at 6 o'clock, something like that today. I'm going to watch it.
Okay. Great way to start the podcast, everybody. Great way to start the podcast. We're talking about NASA and Roy Williams. Let's talk about Virginia Tech football.
Hey, NASA. Teal knows NASA's right around the corner.
That's
right
true.
next
That's
to Picosa.
true. That's true.
That's my territory and his.
Guys, it is. And again, dating myself, I have vivid memories of one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Being with my parents in front of the television set and watching men on the moon, and then swinging the golf club and watching the golf ball travel, with no gravity, traveling hundreds of yards with a simple 9-iron or whatever it was they carried up there. An enduring memory of my lifetime.
Well, hopefully the start of the James Franklin era is an enduring memory for Virginia Tech football fans. So you look at what happened.
Look at that transition.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to lean
fantastic.
into it a little bit. You got to lean into it. So yesterday, you guys talked about it on the podcast quite a bit, so I don't want to get too crazy into it. But you kind of got the holy grail, I guess, if you will, if you're a Virginia Tech football fan when it comes to media availability yesterday, having James Franklin, Brent Pry, and the two quarterbacks with Ethan Grunkemeyer, Andy, and Bryce Baker. So with that being said, what did you learn from that group, and what kind of takeaways do you have going into Wednesday?
Yeah, I think it was just nice to talk to the two top contenders at quarterback. And I say top contenders because it sounds like Troy Hune had a pretty good scrimmage, throwing 4 touchdowns in that, and James Franklin shouted him out for that. I would be surprised if he got into the actual competition and was a legit contender for the job this year. I think it comes down to Grunkemeyer and Baker. I think Grunkemeyer's the odds-on favorite right now, obviously having played last year, been a part of this staff previously. They seem like very down-to-earth guys. And, we talked to them about what brought them here, and it kind of sounds like trust and relationships was the thing that brought both of them here. And you hear NIL money, and I'm sure the NIL money is great with both of those players, but Grunkemeyer was sort of an unheralded quarterback prospect when he was in high school after his junior year. Kind of blew up his senior year, but Penn State was on him before that. He goes there. He plays for not only James Franklin, Ty Howell's on that staff. Danny O'Brien is his quarterbacks coach. So I think there's a lot of loyalty there to those guys. And then Bryce Baker, having a history with Danny O'Brien. They both go to the same high school in North Carolina. When he had originally committed to Mac Brown, when Mac Brown got fired, he was kind of looking around, and he went to a game at Penn State, and that's where that relationship started with those guys. As he saw them play Maryland and beat Maryland pretty handily, I think, in that game. But he got to know Danny O'Brien and James Franklin. So when it came open and they had an opportunity again, he came here. And I asked him specifically, his playing time, was that at the top of your list for making a decision? Because this would be a weird place to come if it was. And he said it really wasn't. That's not what he was looking for. He feels like he can compete wherever he goes. So I thought it was a healthy mindset, refreshing conversations to have with those guys. It'll be interesting to see them in action and how this plays out.
So, and I know you weren't there in person, but when you look at the quarterback room as a whole right now, and again, all due respect to the guys that were here this past year, but when you have Kyron Drones and Pop Watson in your quarterback room in 2025, I mean, you got to feel better about this whole thing, right? Going into 2026 immediately with Ethan Grunkemeyer, Bryce Baker, a very highly touted prospect out of high school, and then Troy Hune still too in the room as well, who obviously another highly recruited guy out of high school that was going to Penn State and is now at Virginia Tech. So overall, you got to feel much better about the quarterback room as a whole right now going into 2026.
Carter, I think you feel better about not only the room, but also the coaching and the relationships among the players and the coaches, as Andy just described from his conversations yesterday. And I go back, I was before we came on today, I was re-listening to my interview with Danny O'Brien when they made all the assistants available. And you can tell how much regard he has for Ethan Grunkemeyer and how he handled himself and comported himself and competed last year at Penn State after Drew Aller went down. And also, I think the direct quote was, "We tried like crazy to flip Bryce Baker from North Carolina when he originally signed there." So this is clearly a room with which O'Brien is comfortable. I was struck by Franklin telling y'all that Hune threw 4 touchdown passes in the scrimmage. To whom did he throw them? How long were they? I need some detail here, guys.
Detail was going to be in short supply on that. That was about the only other. We're like, any other players? He's like, not really. Nope. It's like, okay, I don't feel like he put too much thought into that answer. But he did want to get the Hune news out there, which is, I think, kind of surprising. Historically, I don't think they'd come out and would sort of build up like a true freshman like that, especially at such a position that's under the spotlight like that.
The thing that strikes me about Grunkemeyer is, and like listening to him, he talked about, it's hard. It's weird being the backup guy, and then Drew Aller goes down with an injury, and he's thrust into this role. And I thought he was very candid. Like, you usually don't. Everybody's like, oh yeah, well, like your process and the way you approach it shouldn't change, but like naturally,
it does.
It does. And just stepping into that role, he got more comfortable as the season progressed. Kind of what Danny O'Brien talked to us about, just like you saw his maturation. And I think the Hokies, it'll be an interesting battle, but they've got a guy with a lot of experience now, more than anybody else in that room in Grunkemeyer, a guy who's won games, and he ended the season on a high. And I think the difference between this quarterback room and previous ones in the last couple of years at Virginia Tech is these guys are accurate passers. And the Hokies haven't had that in a while. And the efficient day at quarterback also means that the receivers were doing a really good job of catching the passes, which also has not necessarily been the case as of late.
Are you surprised? I know you guys don't cover North Carolina football, but like looking at it on the surface, with how bad their offense was last year, are you surprised that Bryce Baker never saw the field over the course of the season?
Maybe a little bit. I mean, it was still a true freshman.
Yeah, sure.
Right. And, these are NFL guys. And how often do NFL guys like to switch to the young guy? They always like to give the veterans a chance for the longest time. So maybe that mindset played into a little bit. They still played like 3 guys, I think, at quarterback.
I think that's right,
did they
yeah.
not?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe not surprised by it, but he seems to be a pretty good player from all indications, and seeing the kind of stats he put up in high school and his recruiting ranking and all that. I think what's interesting is they're stacking some talent here at Virginia Tech, and you look at where Grunkmeyer was ranked, you look where Baker was ranked, and you look at where Hune was ranked. That's a pretty good room of quarterbacks that they have here, and people say, well, only one quarterback can play. It's like, that's true, but quarterbacks do get hurt and things don't work and they end up transferring. You got to have somebody behind that. I think for the longest time here at Virginia Tech, that's not been the case. Is how many times has somebody transferred out and then you're kind of in a situation where, hey, this guy better succeed because I don't know if we're going to be able to succeed with the backup.
Yeah, one thing that O'Brien mentioned when we chatted with him was, he said, look, both of these guys, meaning Grunkemeyer and Baker, can do it all. He said Grunkemeyer, stats notwithstanding, is not unathletic. And he said Baker can make every throw you can imagine. So it's going to be fascinating to watch the two of them, and then to see how it's all split up in the spring game. And then also see if there's any role for the backup in any kind of specialty packages.
Grunkemeyer might be able to move, but he's not going to run the ball like Virginia Tech quarterbacks have in the past. So I think Hokies fans need to prepare themselves. It's going to be a little bit different offensively than how they've operated in the past, where, last couple of years with Kyron Drones, 600 yards or whatever it is, that's a given, and 9-10 touchdowns in the season. You'd expect him around that goal line. I don't think you'll see that out of these quarterbacks.
Well, and I'm curious, once we get to see, like, the spring game, get to see these guys in terms of their processing mentally, how they see the game, read defenses. Like, it seems like that's where Grunkemeyer got better as the season went on last year. And if you go watch his highlights, he made some really good throws and Pry talked about that yesterday. This is a quote we mentioned on the other podcast, but that you in zone coverage, there are going to be holes, but these quarterbacks can find the holes and put the ball there. And I don't think that's something they could have said about the previous quarterbacks. I think you're seeing a much different version of Virginia Tech quarterbacks than you had the last couple of years. And it might take the fans a little getting used to. Like, oh, man, like these quarterbacks can make accurate passes. Before it was, man, these quarterbacks are really good and will run the ball and put their shoulder down and run over guys. Bit of a different dynamic.
I have to see it before I believe it. Pry is prone to hyperbole sometimes. How many times over the years, like, this roster is the best we've had it since we've been here. I've heard that many, many times. Like, well, you just went 3-9 during the season. So how true is that? So, spring, talking up guys in the spring and spring hyperbole and all this stuff. Let's see it on the field. I think it has the potential to be a very accurate room. I want to see them fit the ball in these tight windows, like they're saying, before I just take their word for it.
What do the next couple weeks look like for you guys media-wise, too, around spring football? Spring game's coming up in about, 17 days? So what is between now and look like for you guys as a whole?
It's the same thing. I mean, it's Tuesday availability.
Okay.
So get a bunch of stuff on Tuesday and hope it lasts for the week. And I'll be honest, kind of out of stuff this week. We used it all on Tuesday because we split up our interviews. And so I wrote quarterbacks, David wrote the practice report, Chris got some stuff for linebackers, and now we need fresh material again for next week. So looking at the calendar until we can talk to him again.
And I think there's a longer drought in there the final week. when the practice availability is on Thursday before the spring game, if I recall.
Yeah, I think that was so we could ask questions right before the spring game in terms of format and how, because they always wait until the last second to determine, are they going to go offense, defense? They're going to go two teams. What's the health situation of the team that would allow that? So I think that was the purpose of that.
Yeah.
All right, so to basketball we go real fast. Again, there's no offseason for David Cunningham here across the way. We're in the midst of spring football. The basketball portal opens up technically on April 7th, but guys can obviously announce their intentions to enter the portal, and we've already seen that here in Blacksburg with Isaiah Pasha, Neo Abdallas, and Christian Gerdak all reportedly headed to the portal. That is as of Wednesday afternoon. We'll get to Abdallas in just a minute, but I want to start with Christian Gerdak because that was, of the three, probably the only one that was a little bit surprising. So we'll go roundtable with it. Until we'll start with you. I guess as a whole for Virginia Tech's program, this is a true freshman that had a lot of promise going forward. How concerning is it that he's currently in the portal or will be in the portal in the next couple of days?
Carter, we still aren't in a transparent age with all this, with athletes coming and going. Do we know, did Gerdak go to the staff and say, I need X? They said, we can offer you Y. And then there was a discrepancy there, and Gerdak thinks he can get more on the open market. Was he encouraged to look at his options? Does Virginia Tech think it can do better? I'm going to miss him, and I know David will as well, because I found him to be among the most insightful players on the team, in victory or in defeat. Case in point, after the ACC tournament. And he sat there in the locker room and chatted with David and me. I was just struck by how mature beyond his years and well-spoken he is. And I'm going to miss that. And to me, it's testament to the value of open locker rooms. And, you see, and I know we'll get to the NCAA tournament in a while, but all the applause that Caden Boozer is getting for having met with the media after Sunday's turnover that led to Braylon Mullen's shot. And that's because of the open locker rooms. And when, we are not evil people, and when we get access to these athletes, it really does allow them to shine beyond just this podiums where they're just, it's too stage managed. And in a locker room where you can have interaction with these young people, it's so much better.
Oh, and Gerdak was, I really enjoyed talking to him. He was one of the better interviews on the team. And I still remember Teel. I don't remember after which game it was. But point blank, he was very honest. He's like, yeah, I look at bracketology. It's like,
yeah, right.
It's like, oh, really? Usually guys are like, oh, no, we don't look at that. And he's like, nah, man. It's like, you got to see what people are saying about you and have an understanding.
He's the only one that admits to it. Everybody else looks at it. They just don't admit to it.
The thing about this situation is I think it alludes to the bigger picture as far as Virginia Tech, and this is a guy that Mike Young and Gerdak go back to 5 years ago when he was in ninth grade. He was the first ninth grader Mike Young ever offered. They have a great relationship. And as I said on our podcast earlier, it's not like Gerdak just all of a sudden decided, this guy's not a good coach. I can't play for him anymore. It's like, it's... I believe it's a financial thing, but is that telling about what's to come? I think it's to be seen. Regardless, he's a really good player. I mean, he had 17 points and 19 rebounds against Virginia. And he and Amani Hansberry, their work inside on UVA's talented front court won them that triple overtime game. Ben Hammond scoring 30 points obviously helped, but Gerdak is a really good player with a bright future. Played in 31 games, started 10. He's going to be a huge pickup for somebody, and I think it will be a case of just the rich getting richer a little bit, where he's a guy you recruit for 4 or 5 years. He comes for one, and that's it. And I think the frustrating part from a say recruiting point of view in this day and age is, I can spend 3 or 4 years building up a connection with you or Andy, and you guys come play for me for a year or two, and then can go get more money somewhere else. And that's just kind of the reality of the situation nowadays.
The interesting part of this, and I'm curious I'll pose the question this way, because I think Virginia Tech, there's a lot of stuff up in the air about whether or not Virginia Tech can pay, player X amount of money, and where the Hokies kind of sit in the ACC from a financial standpoint. But when you look at where the program currently sits, I think you could pay Christian Gerdak, but is it one of those deals where it's like you have to pick and choose, and you're prioritizing a guy like Ben Hammond or Monty Hansberry and say, hey, we can, again, I have no idea the numbers, but let's say just for the fun's sake, he wants $400,000. Okay, like you can look at your bank account and say, yeah, I could spend $400,000 on Christian Gerdak, but to put it lightly, like, why would I when I can put X amount of money into Ben Hammond or Amani Hansberry? Like, essentially what I'm trying to ask is, does it feel like one of those situations to me? Like, Virginia Tech, I think, can still pay some of their players, but you do have to pick and choose a little bit here as well.
Moneyball?
Yeah, Moneyball.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you have to prioritize. That's what you're getting at.
Yeah, you have to prioritize, yeah.
And Chris made the point on our other podcast that, Gerdak was one of the guys you wanted to keep, but he's probably 4th on the list behind Ben Hammond, Amani Hansberry, and Tyler Johnson. Those guys are all veterans with plenty of experience, and you saw how impactful Hammond and Hansberry were this year, and Johnson would have been if he was not injured all season. Gerdak, very important, but he's probably your 6th man. He's probably not your starting center. You need to go out and get a starting center. And big men cost a lot in the portal. And big men, as Illinois, Michigan, other teams have shown, big men win you games in March. And the difficult part is, would you rather spend a bunch of money to keep him? Would you rather use some of that money to go get what you think is a starting caliber big, but you might not be able to retain your backup? It's a difficult situation, but these are the choices that a lot of these programs are tasked with now. You have to prioritize guys, and that's why, like, when we get to the Abdallas conversation, his performance notwithstanding, from a simply financial aspect of it, like, does not make sense for Virginia Tech.
We'll see if it's a choice. They might just not have the money.
Also true.
Yeah. Who knows? We'll see. I mean, if you're losing him and you're losing Abdallas, you supposedly would have some money to go after guys, and we haven't seen. The portal's not open yet. Correct. Yes. I mean, so nobody's joining teams at this point. They're just leaving teams. We'll see in a month or so once players start committing to these schools. If it's actually like, oh, no, they were just prioritizing and putting their money in different spots, or if they just kind of opened their pockets and were like, hey, we actually just have cobwebs in here. There's nothing to pay these guys. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see, because it could go either way, honestly, and I don't know which one will be true.
David, I think you really hit it there. Was Christian Gerdak going to be your starting 5 next year? And if he wasn't, then it really is a money ball situation. And perhaps he believes that he should be a starter, or that he can be one elsewhere, maybe even for more money. And I was struck by, and this may be totally CYA as he's going out the door, but John Wildhack gave an interview to my friend Chris Carlson at Syracuse.com the other day, the athletic director at Syracuse, saying, hey, we have guaranteed Jerry Mack $8 to $10 million for his roster. And oh, by the way, Red Autry had $8 million last year, so spare me this noise that he was underfunded. hey, if indeed those numbers are true, I appreciate the unvarnished truth. You know, what we wouldn't give to know what the Hokies and Mike Young have available to them for a basketball roster.
It's interesting. There's like an out now for mediocre coaches or bad
Yeah.
coaches. Like, well, we struggled. They weren't funding our roster good enough. It's like, well, sometimes you have to make something out of this roster in the situation you're in. Like, I mean, when you get hired by these places, you kind of have to understand their financial limitations at this point. You can't come in there and be like, we just don't have the money to compete with this roster. It's like, what do you think walking into this situation? You know what it was when you married them. Like, that's the situation you have to know. So, I think it's interesting because sometimes it's like, these coaches, they just don't have enough resources behind them. It's like, well, you got to make do with what you have sometimes and figure it out.
Well, and I think it's also you see a strange dynamic and shift. Shift's probably not the way to describe it. The difference between old school coaches who have been doing it for a long time, guys who were already kind of cemented when NIL rev share came about, a Mike Young or a Steve Forbes at Virginia Tech and Wake Forest, who have had to adapt versus, they were at Virginia Tech and Wake Forest when this kind of went into effect versus a Red Autry or a Micah Shrewsbury at Notre Dame, who they landed at Syracuse and Notre Dame essentially when this was taking off, rev share a little bit later, but NIL. This is kind of what they walked into a little bit. So, yeah, I think it's been interesting to see how some coaches have handled it better than others. But Carter, unfortunately, it's kind of all about the money now.
I'm surprised he put those numbers out there.
Wild hack?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe,
No, yeah.
maybe it's because he's got nothing to lose now.
Well, true. Yeah, he's outgoing, but that is crazy. Yeah. Yeah, I think I think it was David's point earlier. I think where you're really going to tell whether or not Virginia Tech has the money for this upcoming year is let's see what happens with Ben Hammond and Amani Hansberry. It's not going to be like you can't judge based on Christian Gerdak leaving. I think it's on Ben Hammond and Amani Hansberry. Those are the two you got to retain.
They're
for
in
sure.
they're in bigger trouble than we thought if they lose either of those guys.
Yes, yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I mean, again, we're sitting here talking on April 1st, and the portal's not even open yet.
Right.
But got players on both the men's and the women's side have flooded the portal already and are. I imagine it's like, they're waiting, and the dam is just going to break. As soon as it hits midnight those days, and all I'm imagining like being a coach in the portal, and all of a sudden it's just like boom, all these players in the portal, and it's time to sift through them. Now, obviously, you can get ahead on some homework right now, but yeah, we'll see where the Hokies go and who they target, and you might have to, when you're playing a Moneyball approach, you might have to let some guys go in hopes that hey, we can keep a core of Hammond, Hansberry, Johnson together and add to it in different ways. I think of the A's, the Oakland A's, and like you got to figure out different ways to win with the resources you have.
How about you guys?
David, I think.
Oh, go ahead, Teal. I'm sorry.
David, I think you also made a great point about the resurgence of big men in college basketball and their value. We've seen it, for as much talk as there has been about some of the great freshman guards across the country this year. You look at the 4 teams gathering in Indianapolis, what Terrace Reed did for UConn, in the East Regional against both Michigan State and Duke, and what he did in the first 2 rounds up in Philadelphia. He had 41 points and 40 rebounds in those 2 games, the most rebounds ever in the first 2 rounds. And Yaxel Lindenberg and Mare at Michigan, and Koapete and Karchenkov at Arizona. It is a sterling group of bigs, and you look at the ACC. What was the key to Virginia's season? He had those 2 7-footers, and Onyenso and Grunlow teamed with DeRitter at the 4. And that's what folks are looking for these days. They are looking for quality bigs.
Mm-hmm. How will you guys, we've talked about it the last couple of weeks, how will you guys remember the Neo Abdallas tenure at Virginia Tech? I mean, the amount of hype obviously he had coming in. I mean, shoot, David, we sat here, it was the week that Nick got married. We sat, me, you, and Chris came in here as it smelled like Lowe's. We're like middle of the construction site.
It was
the
an
three of us
audio-only podcast.
We recorded an audio-only podcast just about Neo Abdallas coming to Virginia Tech in the middle of the summer. How will you guys remember his 1 year at Virginia Tech? David, we'll start with you, and then we'll go round table with it.
Yeah, I mean, it did not go the way anybody hoped. And as Chris and I talked about, still a risk worth taking, because I think if you're in the Hokies' shoes, you have to try it. You have to. It's not like they had to fight off every single program in the country for him. It was just a couple. And when you're in that, when you have an in like that, and you think you've got a generational talent, a program-changing talent, you got to go for it. But sometimes those things don't pan out. And I think what you're dealing with is a 19-year-old who is adapting to life in the U.S. and went through some highs and lows and dealt with some injuries and dealt with his confidence getting shot a little bit. He was not necessarily the player that dropped 33 points on Providence, but he was also not necessarily the player who only scored 2 points against Miami and was benched down the stretch. There was a middle ground here, and as much as the Hokies catered to him and tried to make it his show, just never really got going. And they had so many injuries and other things with the rest of the roster. But Abdallas never really seemed to hit full gear. And I don't mean scoring. I mean distributing. And he had defensive lapses. And the Hokies didn't necessarily get the most out of him overall. And I think that will be the disappointing part looking back is, yeah, he might go somewhere else and score a lot. But his ball movement was hit or miss at times. His defense was lacking in moments, and he's a young guy still trying to find his way in interesting times. Haven't been in the U.S. for only a couple months, not even a year. But that's what you kind of pay a guy like that to do. You expect him to come in and transform your program, and he didn't really do that. If anything, the transformational player this year for the Hokies was Hammond. And I think that it will be a disappointment in that regard, because you had high expectations in terms of his impact overall, and didn't really pan out like that.
An expensive disappointment, I think, is the way I would describe it. David, how many times did we hear Mike Young say, he's going to get it together, he's going to break out of this, almost as if trying to wish it into existence, when there was a part of him thinking it may not happen. And much to the Hokies' regret, and I'm sure to Neo's as well, it didn't, for myriad reasons, most of which we probably won't ever figure out or ever learn. The fit wasn't right. And I think clearly it's best for both parties to start anew.
The season was really framed by his addition and his first performance against Providence. And he does that, and everybody goes, man, they've got a star. Everybody nationally was saying it. I mean, all the draft nicks that are out there that are, piping in when they see a new player burst on the scene like that. And he just never got back to that level the rest of the season. I think he had one other 30-point game in non-conference game. But, when Mike Young talked about, like, his excitement of the season, I think it was, based on having Abdallas be a star, and he wasn't to that level. And that's, when you're Virginia Tech and you invest that much money in one player, and you don't have a necessarily deep team, and one that was, beset by injuries throughout the entire season, you're going to need that star to be like a star. And he just wasn't that level. I don't know if it just wasn't ready for it. It was just a bad season. You're moving over here from Europe for the first time. That's a big transition that people maybe just kind of take for granted, that you come overseas for the first time in your life and it's seamless. But whatever reason, it didn't work. And it'll be interesting to see him go somewhere else and average 24 points a game.
Yeah.
That's like a stone cold lock, right? Like if he transfers somewhere else, it feels like that is a very Virginia Tech thing to see happen. As somebody goes somewhere else, it's like, well, he's 20 points a game for Vanderbilt as they make the tournament or something like that. I feel like that's inevitable.
Well, and the probably, but also Carter. I mean, this is the same player in February against Georgia Tech. I think he got booed by his own fans.
Yeah,
like
the Duke game. It was the Duke game.
It was
That's what it was.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry, it was the Duke game. Yeah, and you know, I say that just like it's not really surprising. I don't think it's really surprising to anyone that he's leaving.
Yeah,
and it's, as Teel said, best for both parties. And you know, as far as the Hokies payroll goes, that's a lot of money. You no longer that just came open.
gives you more opportunities. And again,
Is he Mike Young's Hendon Hooker?
that could be a fair comp. It very well could be. What do you think? I mean, you got to see what he does at the next school.
We'll see how he does in the next place.
Hendon
But Hendon played pretty well here. That was like
Yeah, that's true.
That was the weird COVID season, and then there was like a personality clash there. So it's like, I think Hendon performed better relative to what expectations were at Virginia Tech than Abdallah did when he was here.
I would agree. Plus, he was only here for a year. New Abdallah. Hendon Hooker was here for 3 years when you include a redshirt? Is that right? 3?
Yeah.
So we shall see. We'll be tapped in 2026, 2027 when Neo Abdallah is balling out for the Virginia Cavaliers. Just kidding. No, hopefully not. That would be something. All right, and with that, let's step aside and hear from our title sponsor, State Farm, here on Talking with Teel. Switching is easy. We do it all the time. We switch on the lights. We switch TV channels. Some of us switch partners while square dancing. Well, that's a stretch. But what's not a stretch is how you can switch and save with State Farm. In fact, a group of State Farm agents that support TechSideline.com can switch you over to State Farm so you can start saving today. These State Farm agents and their team are ready to welcome you to the State Farm neighborhood. Check out Tech Sideline for the agent in your area. It's easy to switch and save. Just give them a call. When you want the real deal, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. And welcome back to this edition of Talking with Teel, presented by State Farm. Looking around college basketball, we talked about the North Carolina head coaching search last week. Teel, I got to imagine you still feel pretty good about your Tommy Lloyd pick to be the next head coach of the Tar Heels. I would assume.
I do. I don't think it's a stone cold lock by any stretch of the imagination, and a Wildcats national championship might further diminish those odds. But I think he is the front runner. I think Andy's pick of Billy Donovan was a very sage one, though I think if Donovan were the guy, it would have been done by now.
Lloyd didn't help his cause to cut any misdirection when they asked him about it. He's like, Arizona will be good long after I'm gone. It's like, you're one of the top coaching candidates for a premier job in college basketball. Maybe you could hide it a little bit better than that.
Yeah, he kind of went out of his way to say it.
That seemed weird. When I heard that, I'm like, he's gone. That's the guy. That was a very weird response. Normally, coaches are better trained in those situations that they don't mess up and spill the beans.
Then he
much.
doubled down on it. He was like,
yesterday.
"Oh yeah, I mean, like there will be another coach after me." It's like
you're not helping your cause. We knew what you let slip there. Like, that was very strange.
Don't trust coaches if they down
guys. I don't think, and maybe my memory fails me here, but I do not remember another national championship coach voluntarily leaving his program for another college job in the immediate aftermath of that title. Now, Larry Brown, after Kansas, won it all in Kansas City with Danny and the Miracles. He had to leave because of NCAA sanctions.
To be fair, he might have left anyway. That was kind of his career.
Yeah, true. And he went back to the NBA. But otherwise, I can't recall of any situation. John Wooden retired. on top, and some others did as well, but never anyone leaving for another job that I can remember.
Well, I just had to look it up, but because I was like, didn't Roy?
His last year, Kansas
but
State
Roy,
lost,
but they
I
were the
think.
runner-up.
Yeah.
Yeah, they lost to Syracuse. They lost to Carmelo.
Yeah.
Because he gave the quote afterwards.
Yeah.
I could give a blank
about
about
Carolina.
North Carolina.
And then went to
To Bonnie Bernstein, bless her heart for asking the question.
and then went to Carolina.
Yeah, yeah. After he turned it down like 3 years prior, correct? I have that right?
Yeah.
Okay. When they hired Matt Doherty. Matt Doherty and the Tar Heels.
Ooh, how'd that work out?
Not good.
Oh,
Not good.
well, it was good at first.
Yeah, then they went 8-24 the next year.
It was good at first.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. So, actually, Andy, I'm going to chime you in here, too, because you covered a lot of coaching searches at Auburn, and we just saw Will Wade depart Raleigh for LSU last week, and the reception at RDU was fantastic. They wished him very well, and they said they hope he enjoys some gumba in his return down to Baton Rouge. But you've covered those situations before, so what is that like to see something like that in person?
Wait, who wished him well?
When NC State fans, they said
They wished him well?
They said I hope he enjoys some gumba down in Baton Rouge.
They stuck up a couple fingers for him on his way
yeah,
out.
I think it was a little more distasteful than you're letting on there. It brought back some memories of people being booed at the airport. Will Wade leaving wherever he was at that spot. I always love it when fans are yelling at cars
Yeah.
or vehicles when they go by. It's like they can't hear you. They're inside the car, obviously. But, I mean, this has really sparked a lot of outrage from NC State fans. And, I mean, I don't like it for NC State fans, but I just like to see chaos like that with a coaching change. And, I mean, Will Wade is universally loathed in the triangle now. I mean, he is just persona non grata there. And, I hope in the future he's forced to go back and play a game there in some way, shape, or form, whether that's I can't imagine they would ever agree to a game against NC State. But you could get put in a NCAA regional or something like that in Charlotte or some area that's close to that. I mean, I've seen a lot of coaches leave, but between Lane Kiffin and Will Wade both going to the same place, I don't know if I've seen coaches burn as many bridges as they did. Where just the previous year they were beloved, right? Will Wade was the savior coming into NC State. Lane Kiffin had rehabbed his entire career at Ole Miss and was sort of like this, the lovable guy that likes to push buttons, social media presence, and all this stuff. And he threw it all away, and he's a villain now at LSU. So just the dynamic of that in the coaches at LSU is just hilarious to me.
Did you see the video of Wade like rolled down his window and he's like, I'm trying to follow more rules this time?
Yeah.
Lean into it, man. If everybody already hates
He does. He leans into the villain role like very few others.
I mean, I didn't notice it until all the NC State fans are pointing it out. He has a weird shape to him. He kind of looks like.
You mean like
the
physical?
pear-
He
the
kind of
pear-
looks like Grimace. I mean, he was wearing that purple LSU shirt. Like, there's just something about him. Like, I didn't realize it was oddly shaped like that. It gives a lot of material to NC State fans to come at him.
The shadiest part about all this is that McMahon was when Will Wade got on that plane. McMahon was still the head coach at LSU.
That's correct.
Like, they hadn't
That's correct.
fired him yet.
Yeah.
They Manny Diaz'd him, right? And that's basically.
Yes, they
That happened,
did.
yeah.
But they got Justin.
Yeah, Manny Diaz would still be the head coach, or would have remained as the head coach at Miami had Mario Cristobal turned them down.
Manny Diaz, more ACC titles than Mario Cristobal
That's
so
true.
far.
That's true. What's crazy is they're so segmented today's day and age, definitely like the older audience where, like, for example, my grandparents, they're on Facebook. Like, they're on Facebook. They don't, like, yeah, they watch ACC Network, they watch SportsCenter and everything, but, like, in theory, you could have somebody that age group that is scrolling through Facebook and they see an announcement where Will Wade's the next head coach at NC State, and they turn, they're like, honey, did we fire Matt McMahon? Like, that's what's crazy.
Yeah, at LSU.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, because you said at NC State. You meant at
LSU. I'm
yeah.
sorry, LSU.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they have no idea the timeline.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'll tell you what, though, NC State fans, number one, can be mad at Will Wade all they like. He got into the NCAA tournament a year after they didn't even qualify for the ACC tournament. Now, was it a crazy, ridiculous clown show to get there? Yes, that's what you sign up for when you hire Will Wade. And that's the way it's going to be at LSU, where even he quipped, we're either going to win a national championship or I'm going to be the first coach fired from the same school twice.
You can say that. Yeah.
And he's remarkable in that way. But NC State, if you are going to hire a first-time head coach, they nailed it with Justin Gainey. I mean, this is a guy who, as a freshman in 1997, played on the first team ever that went through 4 games in as many days at the ACC tournament. And he played 160 minutes, every single minute. He never came off the court, got NC State miraculously to the final against North Carolina where they fell short. But this guy has worked at NC State. He knows NC State. He has worked under Rick Barnes for years and been essentially his de facto defensive coordinator. And what is Tennessee's calling card? Defense and offensive rebounding. I think it's a really good hire and one that has an excellent chance to work.
It makes sense if you get spurned by somebody after a year that you hire somebody that has a connection to the school that they wouldn't want to leave. So it's always, you go the opposite a little bit of your previous hire when you do something like that. So we'll see. Sometimes you do that and you're going for the loyalty side of it. It doesn't work out. And that makes it doubly bad because it's somebody coming back to their alma mater and then not doing well. But I think given all the circumstances, if you're going to appease NC State fans, now is the time to hire an alum and bring him back, and you can curse Will Wade even more after that.
Exactly, yeah. What do you think about Justin Gainey with the Wolfpack, David?
Well, I think he's a really good recruiter too, and I think he fits exactly what they're looking for, and he also, more than anything, I think he understands the standard. And if NC State fans are looking for someone who is going to, given Will Wade, care about them around the clock all the time and not essentially be just a temporary stop, I think Justin Gainey is the right fit. And I thought what Rick Barnes said sort of unprompted about Gainey last week, just all the praise about, like, you know, if you knew him as well as I mean, of course all coaches would probably say this about a lot of their assistants, but just his praise about, you know, if you knew Gainey as long as I did, he would undoubtedly be the best choice for NC State. And I think the Wolfpack looked a little bit elsewhere, but Gainey's probably the right fit. And more than anything, I'm curious to see if that home and home with VCU continues, because I believe they're supposed to go to the Siegel Center.
They are, yeah. I would hope so.
Yeah.
I would hope so.
Yeah. And Andy, to your point about LSU playing NC State, hello, ACC SEC Challenge. Get this done, ESPN.
In Raleigh, please.
LSU to the Lenovo Center. No questions asked. Go do it. They missed on the opportunity to bring buzz back to Blacksburg with Texas A&M. Do not, under any circumstances, let this moment go.
I think if they get to play in that stadium, though, that's too big. You want something more intimate. I want to see him go to Reynolds Coliseum. Yeah. I want the fans on top of the court. I want it to be like the Thunderdome. Like, you need to put up cages around the court or something like that. That would be must-see TV, in my opinion.
That would be great for Reynolds, and also that would do great TV numbers.
It would.
They've put a steel cage around it like it's WWE. That'd be fantastic.
Well, I'm
giving free ideas right here. Come on.
A little bit of a different situation. As you guys know, when he came back to VCU, when he was the head coach at LSU the first time, all the students in the first row were wearing cop costumes. FBI costumes. And they had all this fake money, and they kept on chanting strong bleep offer, because that's what he was caught on wiretap for saying at LSU. So would be a little bit different in Raleigh. I would fear you're going to need a lot of police control if that game is at Reynolds Coliseum for Will Wade. That would be something to see. That would be something to see. So what was your reaction to UConn and Duke on Sunday? I mean, like, honestly, for me, maybe one of the more significant finishes I can remember in the NCAA tournament.
Sure. Carl, I think the suddenness of it all. there's not a timeout where, like in the '92 Duke Kentucky game, where after Sean Woods' remarkable bank shot puts the Wildcats ahead in overtime, Duke calls timeout. Krzyzewski draws up this play they had practiced with Grant Hill throwing the pass to Christian Laettner. This all just happened in real time. Demery makes the free throw to cut it to cut it to two, excuse me, and Duke doesn't call timeout, which I get, because if you spend your last timeout there, then you risk not being able to get the ball in bounds, and then you've got a real problem. But then it just unfolded so quickly, and then he just stepped into it from 35 feet. Guys, Braylon Mullins, in the month of March, before he let that sucker go, was 9 of 53 beyond the arc. And that shot was pure.
It was crazy because it was like the Kihei Clark play, sort of on steroid, like greater stakes. And I think,
Yeah.
Clark's pass was inexplicable, but he put himself in a bad situation, and he was trying to just salvage it. Like, I gotta chuck this thing before I fall out of bounds. Boozer got it, and honestly could have just held it, and they would have come up and fouled him, and they're up 2. Even if you miss one of the free throws, they got to hit a 60-foot shot. Unless it's Boopy Miller, I don't know if they're going to make that shot. But he could have just held it and won it. Like, I understand why he tried to pass it up, because there were 2 guys that were wide open. They collapsed on him, but he didn't need to do something in that situation. Then for the UConn guy, they get the steal and pass to the UConn guy, and then he passes up the 3. He passes it back, and it was sort of like a reasonable 3-point length to the 35-footer all of a sudden. When he made that pass, I'm like, what are you doing? And then the guy lets it go, and it was just absolute net after that. And then the last part of it was John Shire's expression, which will be memed until the end of time. It is, somebody put it up next to that. You remember that Ronaldo statue that they put out there that looked horrible?
Really bad Ronaldo
like
statue.
Ronaldo, like one of the most attractive people in history, Ronaldo, and they make him look like this in the picture. Like, this is John Shire looking at that. It was just perfect match, 1-to-1. So all those things combined in like 1 30-second span there, whatever it was, just unbelievable how that thing happened.
I think you saw the just why Ian Eagle and Bill Raftery and Grant Hill are so great too. And if you haven't seen the behind the scenes video of their reactions watching it too, I thought Ian Eagle killed the call, but just that they're so speechless. And Grant Hill, a Duke alum, having to
who threw the pass to Christian Laettner,
having to find the courage. The craziest thing about that play to me, though, is that there was 10 seconds on the dot left. They could have held it and run out the clock. They also could have thrown the ball up in the air and hope.
Well, they had
most of the
wasn't
time
there a
around.
clip that came out that they had showed from the Bulls game? Like, what could he do here? Throw it in the air.
Well, so back in February, yes, John Shire showed a clip of his team of, I believe it was Tyus Jones.
Yeah.
And he with like 1 or 2 seconds left, he chucked the ball straight up. Time expired when the ball was in the air. End the game. And it's like everything else. You could have done so many different things. And credit to UConn for not necessarily fouling immediately.
right?
Playing defense. Mullins blocks the pass, gets it back, and that's up there. To me, that reminds me of just. It was for the national championship, but Chris Jenkins and the Marcus Page, Chris Jenkins, and the suddenness of it. Obviously, that a little bit different stakes go to the Final Four, but just like no timeouts, it happened so instantly, and my gosh, and that's not the first time these two programs, Duke and UConn, have had a wild buzzer-beating finish, huh, Teel?
No, you go back to the regional final. I think it was 89 or 8, and the Meadowlands where Christian Leitner hits the buzzer beater to beat UConn off the out of bounds play that Mike Krzyzewski deemed special. Leitner inbounds it and then gets a retrieved pass back and buries it at the buzzer to deny Calhoun and UConn its first Final Four.
Was that one where he started
and then you go to
pump the shot? I'm trying to think of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you go to the '99 title game in St. Yep, you go to the '99 title game in St. Petersburg. Among, if not the best team not to win the national championship, was that Duke '99 squad, and they lose to Rip Hamilton and Khalid El-Amin and UConn. So yeah, these programs do have a history, and it's funny, David, you bring up the Chris Jenkins shot, and then you contrast that to the Braylon Mullins. You know, Hurley just loses his mind, goes crazy on the sideline. And then remember Jay Wright, I mean, just Jay Wright, gangster, he just kind of subtly fist pumps, and you can hear him say, bang, and it's over, and it was just so Jay Wright and so understated, and he's wearing that pinstripe suit, and it was classic.
And
What was Hurley thinking, by the way?
Meanwhile,
I was gonna say,
Hurley
that was
gets
insane.
With
into
Roger
Roger
Ayers.
Ayers' face.
He is so
Yeah.
lucky. Like, good on Ayers for realizing the moment and realizing
Yes.
it wasn't like malicious. But he made contact with an official with like pressing his forehead against it. Like I can only chalk it up to like he lost his mind at that point. It was such an unbelievable shot. I mean, his like suit coat is like over his shoulder, and he kind of is walking around like he's got this dazed look on his face. But like any other moment in any other game, I feel like you would get a technical foul there, and I don't think one should have been called in that situation, because that would have ruined one of the great moments of basketball. And I don't
Yes.
think it was like out of anger or intimidation or anything like that. But it was just so bizarre to see him have this
Unnecessary.
come up to him just like
Well, what was even the
forehead
point,
to forehead.
too?
It
What was the
insane.
point?
It's Dan Hurley, man.
Roanoke native Roger Ayers, too, by the way. Shout out Roger Ayers.
Oh, and guys, by the way, Dan Hurley in the NCAA tournament in the Sweet 16 and beyond, 10-0.
Pretty good.
So
So
when-
the interesting thing about this game is this week in my class, it was a deadline game story assignment. Oh. And my class, they're procrastinators. They do everything at the last second.
Sure,
so
sure.
this was the last college basketball game of the weekend. And I'm watching that, and it was a 19-point game. I'm like, I think a lot of kids in this class are going to be doing this game for their deadline game story. And I'm sort of half watching this. They're coming back, and then they hit the shot on it, and I'm like, well, welcome to the showbiz here. This is how they like completely scrap your lead. You got to rewrite this whole thing, because the assignment was it was due 30 minutes after the conclusion of the game. So it was a deadline
Woo!
story. And
Whoa.
like I get in the class on Monday, and like how many people chose the Duke UConn game? It was like 9 or 10 kids raised their hand. I'm like, that was one of the toughest deadline game stories you will ever encounter, and that's the one they chose for their first one. So that's how it's done. I guess it happens out there.
What a Final Four we have.
Yeah.
But I want to get your thoughts just on Duke as a whole, because
Sure.
it's like last year, up a big double digits against Houston, lost in the Final Four, and against Texas Tech and North Carolina this year, up big, and then this game, I mean, John Shire deservedly ACC Coach of the Year, but it just seems like they are just missing something in some of these big games. I mean, it's not like they've lost many times, but it's like every these 3, 4, 5 losses the last couple they've had, it's been like they've blown a lead and lost it right at the end, and they just kind of let it slip away.
It's true, David, and heck, you go back to the latter stages of Mike Krzyzewski's career. Duke's exits from the NCAA tournament are just amazing. Zion Williamson in that very same arena, their last game, R.J. Barrett misses a free throw at the end against Michigan State in the Elite Eight. Grayson Allen against Kansas in the Elite Eight. His last second shot to win it goes around the rim twice before falling out. It goes to overtime, and KU wins. And then the Caleb Love shot over Mark Williams' outstretched arm in 2022 in New Orleans at the Final Four in Krzyzewski's career. Duke has had its share of good fortune in the NCAA tournament, but man, karma has changed sides here of late, and it's been a rough look for John Shire. He's going to have to own it. He will have to own it until he wins one, which I think is inevitable for two reasons. Because Duke and its resources is a lure for the best talent in the game. And oh, by the way, he's a hell of a coach. And spare me this stuff that, that he just gets by because of Duke's talent. No. Number one, recruiting is part of coaching. And he recruited these guys. He's managed the roster. He's managed the egos. They've won 70 games in the last 2 seasons combined. He knows what he's doing. He's going to get it done, but he's going to need to look in the mirror and figure out some things that he could have done better, which he could have, to settle his team as UConn was coming back from 19 down.
As someone whose alma mater was stymied in a national championship game by Duke, I have no sympathy for the Blue Devils. They can lose for all time as far as I'm concerned. And this is comeuppance for a favorable whistle down the stretch in that game. I don't want to hear any tears or see any tears over here for the Blue Devils.
I will say Duke looked really inevitable all season long, with the exception of that North Carolina game in the Dean Smith Center, until Patrick Gongba and Caleb Foster went down with injuries. And then they got through the ACC tournament okay, but Siena gave the Blue Devils a scare.
Yeah.
And man,
They looked very mortal in the tournament.
St. John's, I thought St. John's played them really well. That's a really good St. John's team. And I felt it looked like the writing was on the wall. And then they go up 19, and it's like, oh, this one's over. Not so fast.
Nope. All right, so with that being said, you mentioned the Final Four: Arizona, Michigan, Illinois, and UConn. Teal, what's your take on the whole thing? And I know you had Houston winning it all, so you get a mulligan. Who wins this weekend in Indianapolis?
My mulligan would be Michigan.
Okay.
To give the Big Ten its first title, remarkably in 26 seasons since Izzo in 2000. But you look at Michigan, Arizona, and Illinois. None of those teams has played a single-digit game in this tournament. That's never happened in the Final Four before. Only once in the Final Four history since the bracket expanded have there been 2 teams that went through the bracket before the Final Four without a single-digit scare. This year we have 3 of them, and then you have UConn, which is the polar opposite, gets by Izzo by 3 points, I want to say. No, 4 points in the semis in DC, and then Duke by a point on Sunday. So that's interesting to me. And everybody's going to say that Michigan, Arizona, that's the de facto title game, and maybe in fact it will be. But man, I would not want to bet against Dan Hurley in a national championship game.
Yeah, my bracket has been horrible. We did a little competition in the class and had different groups pick stuff. I'm in dead last.
Are you really?
But I did pick Arizona to win it, so I can save some face here if Arizona actually gets the championship game and wins it. Michigan looks really good. I don't know. That seems like I would probably favor Michigan in that game. I don't know what the line is off the top of my head. But like Teal, there's something about UConn that, I mean, they get in these games. They're clearly not intimidated by the situation. Maybe survived by the skin of their teeth, I think is safe to say, in that Duke game last week. But This should be a fascinating Final Four. I think it really interesting teams that are in it. A bunch of very good programs that haven't been there in a while. I mean, Arizona, was it 2001? Is that how far back we go with them?
Yes.
Illinois has been a long time. So since back to, I think, when they were in the championship game that one year. UConn, obviously not, but Michigan's been a while. What was the Louisville, Michigan championship game that never happened? Is that the
Yes. Yes.
In hindsight, the NCAA takes that one back, but this feels like a fun Final Four where it's like really good teams. I think they're all up there in the Ken Pom rankings, like pretty good teams there. I'm excited about this Final Four, whereas there have been some in recent memory where I'm like, I don't know if I need to watch that one.
Yeah. Guys, Dan Hurley is going for his third national championship in 4 seasons. Only 2 coaches in history have won 3 in 4 seasons. John Wooden and Adolph Rupp. That's it.
And once again, I'm begging UConn, do not change leagues to try to satisfy some football thing here. Just stay where you are. It's working in basketball. That's your brand, your identity. Don't screw that up by trying, when they joined the Big East back in the day and it messed up their basketball program. Don't go to the Big 12. Don't go to the ACC in this situation. Just stay where you are. You're a fantastic basketball program, on both sides, men's and women's. Keep it that way. Just make that your niche.
I pulled up our on ESPN Tiny Teal's bracket group, and just to check the leaderboard. Andy's by far and away in last place. Like I'm in.
It was a bad bracket.
I'm in second to last, and I have 130 points more than Andy.
Oh, really? Okay.
Carter, you're tied with Teal for second.
Okay.
Right
okay.
behind Dave Fairbank, and then Nick is in fourth.
Okay, but what can you get in the Final Four here? How many points can I make up here?
Who did you pick to win, David? You picked Michigan?
I picked Michigan.
Okay, I
to
picked
win.
Michigan.
You did too. Nick has Arizona.
Okay.
That's going to block me there. That's going to be rough.
I find this Final Four so fascinating. And the crazy thing is, had we gotten Duke, I mean, you're talking about Duke has been one of the number ones all year. But I thought that Arizona Purdue game was really intriguing for a long time. Michigan just looks unbelievable. But Arizona also has. And then Illinois, I think, has like quietly just dominated everyone. I would stick with Michigan, but and then UConn's kind of like the lone wolf out there, just like doing its own thing. Dan Hurley screaming in officials' faces, like pick your poison, I guess. And they all have such different styles, such great players. Illinois' offense, Michigan is probably the most balanced, but Arizona is just lethal. Some of these games, man, like we are going to have a great weekend of hoops.
Yeah, it's fascinating, David, how almost counterculture Arizona's offense is. In this era of hoist threes, ask questions later, I believe the Wildcats attempt 26% of their shots beyond the arc, which ranks 363rd among 365 teams in the country. Only 2 other teams attempt fewer shots beyond the arc than Arizona. That's how inside heavy they are. But yet they shoot the 3 accurately. They're just very judicious about it. And while others, of course, in the NBA, it's all about the 3. And we really didn't mention Michigan's absolute demolition of Tennessee in Chicago. I feel bad for Tennessee fans. They've never been to a Final Four. This is 3 consecutive Elite 8 exits for Rick Barnes' program. And having seen Tennessee in person beat Virginia, I was really impressed and borderline stunned at how Michigan just destroyed them. It was the most lopsided regional final since Michigan over Virginia in 1989 at Rupp Arena. And what did that Michigan team go on to do? Win the national championship.
Well, and I thought the way Illinois just slowly waxed Houston in Houston
Yep.
was also
In
impressive.
Houston.
You got 4 good coaches, 4 really good teams, all with great front courts, great post presence, and combine that with the women's Final Four, which is the best of the best. It's going to be a great basketball weekend.
Women's Final Four is like finally they're going to play some teams that are on their level.
Yeah.
Every one of those games have been blowouts for the one
you got
seeds.
South Carolina, UConn, and in the final, I mean, that game's going to be awesome. But UCLA and Texas are also both really, really good.
It's David. It's the same Final Four as last season, right?
Yeah,
The
that's
exact same 4 teams.
It is, and
What's nice about that too is it's like one team from every area of the country.
That's true.
Yeah.
Like you
True.
do get a wide swath of the country that's interested in it. I think that's kind of a cool thing they have going.
it's crazy to think that 3 years ago Virginia Tech was in that.
It is insane.
But the Final Four that year was also Iowa, South Carolina, and
LSU.
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 You know, Iowa, South Carolina, LSU have kind of been the staples outside of UConn. Texas and UCLA, I think, are both so interesting. But the common theme throughout is a lot of veterans, and they've stacked the boat, and they've got a lot of really, really, really good players. And I am so excited to see what happens. And then, man, open the floodgates, transfer portal season.
Well, Teel, as always, appreciate your time. I say best of luck. I'm used to talking to coaches this time of year. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the Final Four. This time next week when we record, we will know whether or not Chandler Morris will potentially be back at Virginia next season. So look forward to chatting about that and much more next week. So appreciate it as always.
Thanks, guys. Enjoyed it. I am off to the Nats home opener on Friday to get my first ever in-person glance at Shohei.
Oh,
Ohtani.
nice.
That is awesome.
I
Go
saw
to-
him play in Baltimore a couple years ago where he pitched and he hit in the same game, and it's just like, how is he this big and this fast and this good at base? Like it kind of boggles your mind when you see it in person.
Go to the bullpen before the game. The bullpen right outside the ballpark. That's a good spot at Nats Park. Let's do it. Let's do it. All right, Teel, appreciate your time as always and look forward to once again chatting again next week.
Sounds great, guys.
For the Virginia Sports Hall of Famer David Teel, David Cunningham, Andy Bitter, Nick Brown, I'm Carter Hill saying so long from episode 29 of Talking with Teel presented by State Farm. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you very soon.